Well, when you hear forecasts about such dramatic changes in our economy, you can't help but worry about how to prepare. In our continuing outlook into 2006, we focus on education and its role in our state's success. Earlier, I sat down with nationally renowned education expert Bill Dagget. So, Bill, what do students in today's world need to know?
Rob, they need to know what to do when they don't know what to do. And so often we don't teach that in our schools. Anything that is routine and concrete and sequential, the technology will do today, leaving the unknown for the human being. And unfortunately, schools don't always teach that. I would also suggest to you that more than ever before, they got to be lifelong learners. We don't even know with the technology what global competition will bring in 5 years. So they're going to have to be lifelong learners. And unfortunately, when we think about lifelong learning, we think about skills like reading. But when we think about reading as educators, and I'm an educator, we think about novels, newspapers, magazines. Lifelong learning in the 21st century is reading of technical materials. And I wonder how many people watching us right now have got their DVDs or VCR clocks on 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Yet they got the manuals. See, we don't teach things like technical reading in our schools. They do in Europe and Asia. And therefore, they're in a better position to be lifelong learners in the 21st century than we are. We're preparing people to be lifelong learners for the 20th century, for a time that passed us by.
From an educational system standpoint, how do you go about teaching those skills, and how do you go about encouraging people to learn those skills?
For the top half of the class, we can teach them the way you and I were probably taught in school. Lectured to, took notes, regurgitated it back. But in the 21st century, we got to educate all children. Half of the kids we never got to because they didn't buy and didn't have a learning style and interest and aptitude that was consistent with the teaching style of our schools, which is the student becomes passive, the teacher works. We're supposed to, suck in all the knowledge that is being thrown at us. If we're going to get to the second half of that graduating class, we've got to teach them through their interests, learning style, and aptitudes. So, for example, if the kids love the arts, teach math through the arts. Teach science through the arts. If they love a career, they want to be a welder. You know how much math and science is involved in welding? And so you take and you integrate the academics into what historically were elective programs. And you let the child follow their dream in a way. Like art, take a lot of art, but it's not the old art. It's not the old career and tech and voc ed program. It's applied academics, using their areas of interest as a way to motivate them, to bring contextual understanding to the academics.
Let's take the flip side of that. You talked about that top half and the bottom half. What happens in today's world when that bottom half isn't taught what they need to know to survive in today's world?
They become, for the nation, an economic liability rather than an economic asset. And they doom themselves long-term to poverty. And increasingly in this country, we cannot compete with a large percentage of our young people not having the higher skills. In the past, we could. And we could in the past because in the past there were a lot of unskilled jobs. Unskilled labor in this country is no longer an economic commodity. And so if you're not skilled, you're simply going to have a certain living quality of life that is really inferior to anything that Americans want. And the nation begins to pay for you rather than you contributing to the nation.
Now, we think a lot about unskilled labor being in second world and third world countries, but what about the countries like India and China? How do they approach their educational system?
Dramatically different than we do. They have two major advantages over us. Number one, our education system have rules and regulations and certification and tenures and contracts built out of many decades of history. You want to change a high school, have a real revolution? Try to change a bell schedule, see what happens to you. Try to change the bell schedule by a day. Try to change the bus schedule. Why do kids in Oklahoma still have the summer off? I don't think they're all working in the fields all summer. All built upon tradition. Those developing nations have very little tradition in education. They had a blank piece of paper. If America had a blank piece of paper, it would never organize the schools the way they have them organized. And so their lack of history in education helps them. The second one, and it's a much more politically explosive issue, is rightly so in America. We are committed to excellence and equity at the exact same time. China is not. They're working at equity a little bit better than they used to be, but nowhere near to what America is. China has more equity than India. See, if you're only going to educate a small percentage of your children, and you can pick and choose who they are, you can get to high standards very, very quickly.
But when it comes to excellence and equity, it almost seems like we don't have the choice, even if we didn't want to do it, because we don't have those low-skilled jobs here in the United States anymore.
Yeah, it's a moral and an economic reason why we got to address equity. You're absolutely right, Rob. I mean, from the moral point of view, all children should be given an opportunity. From an economic point of view, we have to bring them to higher standards. But to do that, I say again, we got to teach differently. We got to teach from a contextual basis. We got to teach the math, the science, the language arts through an area that is of interest to those kids. So in an agricultural program, you teach very, very rigorous math, science, language, art skills. And you don't simply teach ag over here and math and science over here. You got to integrate them together. And that's what the highest performing schools in the country have learned, and that's where they have moved in the last 4 to 5 years.
All right, fascinating subject. Thank you for coming by.
Thanks, Rob.